Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. I'm Jill Hart, your host. DeeAnna Nagel is joining us today. She is a certified essential soul care practitioner. The essential soul care is a psychospiritual model that incorporates spiritual and metaphysical tools into the healing process. And she is also the host of Soul Portals podcast, which explores psychospiritual horizons with Cedric Spire. Welcome to the show, DeeAnna. I'm really excited to chat with you about all the things. But first, why don't you let the listeners know what your background is? Because I think you have a kind of unique background in terms of your education behind what got you into what you're doing today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Uh-huh.
So I was one of those, kids that was kind of touched because I kind of knew things and didn't know why I knew them.
Mm-hmm.
And that continued into my adulthood. And I didn't know what to call it. It's generational in my family, however. One line of us going back to, as far as I can tell, to my great-grandmother. So at some point, I tried college and that didn't work for me. So I dropped out and joined a rock band. That didn't work either. So in my late 20s, I went back to school after having some therapy for my own stuff, which I always think is a good idea for people who want to be therapists. And I decided to become a therapist myself. So I got my master's degree in counseling, became licensed. This was a very long time ago. I've been in the helping professions now for over 30 years and started seeing clients, working in a lot of crisis-oriented settings. I did a lot of clinical supervision with up-and-coming therapists, still do some of that. Became a thought leader in the field of telemental health and online therapy, traveled the United States teaching that back in the day before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I was accustomed to doing things that were sort of considered outside the box. But then I just got to a place where I wanted more and I didn't know what that meant even. I had an illness that was exposure to black mold. That's what caused it. Mm-hmm. So I was on my own wellness journey, trying to become as holistic as possible, which led me down a lot of avenues, including becoming a Reiki master. And then I was introduced to essential oils and my whole world shifted. Like essential oils were the pathway, the portal, so to speak, for my own spiritual awakening through the olfactory sense. It was very powerful, moved me and shook me in ways I couldn't have imagined. And so I sort of came out of the pixie closet, thinking maybe I went to graduate school to justify my intuition. And then I just came out and said, I am an intuitive. And I got a lot of flack from my professional community. I was told I was committing professional suicide. You can't do that. You're a licensed therapist. This isn't in your scope of practice, on and on. And I said, okay, thanks. Thanks for the heads up. And I just continued and doors have opened. I became a coach. I became a wellness coach. I was asked to teach at a major coaching school that's ICF accredited. I teach clinical supervision, still have my hand in the therapeutic pot. But the metaphysical and psychospiritual place is where I find home. I got my doctorate in spiritual direction, multi-faith spiritual direction. And so I do a lot of teaching around spiritual literacy so that coaches and therapists and helpers and guides understand how important it is to be aware and sensitive and open to what the clients bring to us. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I love how what we call the woo is becoming more mainstream, and people are realizing that it's just because you label something doesn't mean that it's not valid and that there isn't a place for it. And more people are realizing that if they go to somebody who's intuitive, they're going to get better results, because an intuitive, by the definition of the word, feels what you're trying to put into words, rather than depending on you to explain your symptoms. They listen to you, but they are also feeling what you're saying so that they can relate to you better. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Do you
and
agree with that?
yeah, I agree. And I also make the distinction that I am an intuitive, which is different than saying I'm intuitive.
Mhm.
Because we all are intuitive.
Yeah.
But I use my intuitive gifts intentionally when I work with other people. So I think it's a slight change in the semantics, but
It's a
it's all
definite important distinction. It's like saying we're all spiritually connected. Some people practice it and are better at it,
right. Yeah.
or we're all psychic. And I do believe we are all psychic, but some people really work at it and are better at it and can actually apply it in life, rather than just like saying that's what I am.
Yeah, and it becomes part of spiritual practice for me. It's part of my daily practice. I do things that naturally increase and extend my intuition. So, and the next person may be extremely intuitive, but is not necessarily doing anything daily to massage that gift that we all have. So,
I was recently talking to somebody about tuning forks, and you know how tuning forks, if you have two tuning forks and one's vibrating, if you bring the other one up into its proximity, they will both vibrate at the same frequency. And people are like that. We all have a frequency, and we need to be around things that are elevating that frequency so that we can operate optimally, rather than just like wandering through life and letting things influence us. Intentionality, I think, is the key.
yeah, and I think where frequency is involved, well, hello, essential oils, because that's frequency in a bottle.
Yes.
The frequency of the earth. But, when we're talking about vibration and frequency with other humans, it's all about harmonizing. It's all about like walking in the room, and not necessarily protection, but we just harmonize our frequency and our energy with the energy that's in the room. And that's an intentional process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I know you do oracle cards. So you want to talk a little bit about that, because they just fascinate me. I know tarot and oracle are different, but in some ways they are both cards. You want to speak to that?
So yeah, I guess I've been using oracle cards, some tarot. Tarot to me, tarot is a more defined process and layout of the cards. There's always the same number of cards. There's the suits. And with oracle, there's a little more freedom and flexibility with expression, at least from my perspective. So I've always been more drawn to the oracle in terms of my own use.
Mhm.
although I love a good tarot reading for to be delivered to me. But so I did some oracle training, oracle card training, and just really enjoyed the artistic expression of an oracle deck. And there's so many decks out there. They're all so many beautiful decks. But I wanted to create a process that included some of the psychospiritual and metaphysical tools that people may or may not be aware of, so they can incorporate it into their daily spiritual practice. And so it's called Essential Soul Care because essential oils were sort of the foundation of how this all came to be and how the deck was created. And I co-created it with Madison Akridge. We have similar backgrounds. She's also a therapist, and created a 49 card deck with 7 categories matching the 7 chakras and creating an element around each chakra. And we suggest which essential oil to use, which crystal to hold, affirmations that match the card's message. And we have what we call soul play and soul studies. So if the card comes up right, you've got a soul play journal prompt. If it comes in reverse, that's soul study, shadow work. And a therapist or a coach can use this deck either intuitively.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's your spread and here's what comes up for me. Does this resonate? Right? Or they can use it as a projective tool, which is within a therapist's scope of practice to do. And so the therapist might just show the client a card and say, what do you see here? Or let's do some contemplative writing. Pen to paper, 5 minutes, don't stop, don't lift the pen, see what comes up. That's free association. Freud talked about it back in the day. So we just include a lot of tools and keywords, and then the playbook or the workbook that goes with it has labyrinth tracing and crossword and word search and all kinds of ways to balance the right and left brain. So it's not anything that's necessarily used in a linear fashion, but all the tools are there. Like, what's drawing you today? Yeah.
Interesting. So when people do readings, would they incorporate both tarot and the oracle? Like my experience is that, I watch YouTube, which is probably like a lot of people's experience because, for the longest time, it's been like, so don't tell anybody I have cards, and really when you said you came out of the closet, it's like, yeah, you come out of the closet and you tell people, hey, I use these things, that I think they're amazing tools, and I don't think they're not the devil, or you're not going to go to hell because you look at tarot cards. They're great tools for helping inspire you to use your own creative process to figure out what they mean to you. This is not somebody telling you this is going to happen in your life. It's clear cut, and I'm not telling you your future. I'm just telling you the potential.
Right. Well, and some people do predictive readings. That's, I see the cards, whether tarot or oracle, as a guide. And we have free will. So even if you do a predictive reading, anything can happen. Time is not linear. The cards don't think the time is linear. But yeah, I think you can use oracle and tarot together. I do for my own personal, and sometimes if I use oracle, I may pull a tarot card for clarification. Like if I feel like, okay, like I don't want to do oracle abuse where that doesn't resonate. Let me pull another card. Okay, the card that comes up is the card that has the message for you. So, and we even say with our deck, if you need clarity, you can pull another card from the same deck, or you can choose another deck. Yeah.
So do you ask questions? Is that kind of how you would use it? In what context would you use your oracle deck for a client?
Well, so for my own personal daily practice, I pull a card every day. What does spirit universe want me to know today?
Okay.
And within that next 24 hours, I'm probably going to journal about it. You know, I may pull a card and it seems like so totally off base from anything in my life that day, but it's 24 hours later that you start connecting the dots, right? So I encourage people to really trace the synchronicities, because when you can trace synchronicities, you're on your path, and that's expanding your intuition. But with clients, again, there's so many different ways to use it. Just pull a card. What does this illustration look like to you? Or don't use the deck and just pull a journal prompt. Like, or somebody says, I'm in deep grief, right? In our deck, we have a card, the grieving heart. So you can pull that card out intentionally and maybe play around with the journal prompts, or ask the client if they'd like to repeat an affirmation around grief. So there's just so many ways you can use the deck with clients without stepping out of your scope of practice, without it being forecasting. That's not what we're doing. And yet your own intuitive tools and gifts can be used. You know, I get sometimes, we call it an intuitive hit or a download. For the most part, I'm claircognizant. I just get a knowing and I just know it. But other clairs pop in occasionally, like clairvoyance, and I might see an image. I might not know what the image is, but I might say, you know, what's coming to mind is, you know, I'm seeing a fern, a plant. Does that resonate with you? So you can still bring your intuitive gifts to the table, but therapists do have to be aware of their, you know, their rules of their license, etc. But you can stay in your lane.
Yeah, it reminds me of the
Rorschach, yeah.
Thank you. The Rorschach cards.
You know, what do you see here?
Yeah, and they're just, everybody sees something different, and it doesn't mean anything in and of itself, except for the meaning that you bring to it.
Exactly.
And then you can explore it. And I think both tarot and oracle cards are kind of like that. And if you pull another one for clarity, or if you pull a different card for clarity, with the tarot, there are often symbols and meanings attached to different cards, so that you have a place to start your investigation. Is that how you understand it too, or am I?
I'm not. I dabble with tarot. Tarot is not really my instinctive go-to. But I think tarot and oracle both have that symbolic feature, metaphors, symbols. You know, our deck is full of metaphors and symbols. We chose monochromatic art, black and white mostly, because the goal is that the client or the person receiving the reading can interpret sometimes at a much deeper level with a simpler graphic than when they have the entire painting, right? So it's like a blank slate to sort of build on. We give you the basic idea. And so where does your mind go with that? What senses are being kicked up when you see this image? Yeah.
So you want to pull a card and then we'll look at it. And
Sure.
I presume that they're going to have, each card has something that it's supposed to represent or mean, but
Yes.
it doesn't have to, is what think I'm hearing you say. Is that correct?
Well, like you said, whatever meaning we ascribe to it, it may have a different meaning for you. So the other thing about this deck is oracle decks are typically channeled. So the way this deck was written, literally, was Madison and I, we had talked about the concepts we wanted to include in the deck. We talked about how we wanted the playbook structured. the elements we wanted to include, but when it came down to writing the message of the card, we spent 4 or 5 days huddled in a room, meditating, contemplating, getting these messages. And when we were all done, there's a few I know I wrote, and there's a few I know she wrote, but overall, we don't know who wrote what. So it's a beautiful thing, to know that spirit is in the room, and I'm not orchestrating this. It's being orchestrated. I'm just the conduit.
Yeah.
So this is the deck. This is the mandala that's on each card. And we'll just pull a card.
Okay.
What do Jill and I need to know about this experience we're having right now? And the card that came up is Peaceful Counsel. So that's a dove. And it says, ask, reveal, allow. This is the crown chakra. This is transcendence. And the cards are numbered. And even though I wrote the deck, I still look in my guidebook. And the guidebook has 2 pages per card. And the oracle message is, the dove is a spirit messenger. You are being reminded to rely on your guides. Ancestors, ascended masters, totems, ethereal and celestial beings are available to you. Ask Source to reveal your spiritual mentors and allow. Remember, too, your higher self is also part of your counsel. Find it interesting that card came up because we were just talking about channeling and spirit. The essential oil for transcendence in the crown chakra is frankincense. Frankincense is, everybody's familiar with frankincense as a oil for prayer and meditation. So we encourage you to literally anoint yourself with it, or sweep your aura with frankincense. The crystal is clear quartz. The affirmation
you see
is,
this quartz that I am holding in my hand?
Awesome. The affirmation is, I am divinely guided. And so if you notice, when I pulled the card, it came upside down in reverse. So for an intuitive reading, that would mean, let's go to the soul study prompt. It says, describe a circumstance that might have been experienced differently had you trusted your higher self. Okay, so imagine working with a client. That's a beautiful journal prompt to go a little deeper. The soul play journal prompt is, who is a part of your peaceful counsel? Can you identify your peaceful counsel?
I can. It's Joan and the Unicorn Posse. But
okay. Right, and a lot of people, they have a counsel, they just have never called it that, and maybe they've not been intentional about what that means in their world. Some people refer to angels or guardian angels or ancestors. Those may all be part of somebody's counsel.
I'm sure there are more. I just, she is the one. She's shown herself to me. I have actually a visual of her riding a blue bicycle, and it's kind of like a Toulouse-Lautrec image. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was an artist that he's very distinct images of human beings, and that's what comes to me when I think of her. And she brings her unicorns to visit when I'm really stressed. It's like, here, just pet the unicorns. Stop thinking about stuff.
That's awesome. So do you identify with the idea that your higher self is also part of your counsel?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of us, most of us do, but we don't necessarily think of it in that term, in that way. And so with each card, there's also defining moments, which we consider here. If you're really interested in the concepts that were presented here, then defining moments here are ascended masters. Google it. totem animal. Those are potential other parts of your council. So that's just a 1-card pull. You know, as with any deck, you can do a 3-card spread, a 5-card spread. You know, there's tons of beautiful spreads on the internet. Full moon, new moon. Yeah, and just, you know, one thing Madison and I wanted to imbue in the deck, though, is a sense of fun. Like, you know, this isn't heavy stuff. It's soul play. And yes, there's also soul study, because we all have a shadow side. So it can be whatever you want it to be.
And do you sell the cards outside of actually working with people? Is this like something that you do on the side? Or is it just strictly part of, how
So
would people get a hold of your deck?
the deck is available on Etsy.
Mhm.
It's on Amazon. Etsy is more user-friendly and seems to be the place to go for Oracle and tarot, especially independent publishers. So,
Right.
you know, not just my deck. I encourage people to visit Etsy and just look at the array.
There's
Oh,
so
and there's
much.
so many of them, and they're beautiful. So Etsy is my favorite. But you can get it on Shopify. And if you take the course, we have a 30-hour course that goes through each card. We do a deep dive on all 7 elements and chakras. And so people who take the course buy the deck. It's on Deckable, which is an app for cards. So people can, if they have the Deckable app, they can just download it from that.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
when you do the 30-hour course with you, are you certified? Do you certify
You're a
people?
certified essential soul care practitioner.
So is it a group sort of modules? Like how
Um,
does
my
all
course
that
is
look?
online and self-directed. So you
Okay.
go into a learning platform and you'll read, and there's a lot of introspective journaling, of course.
Right.
There's some videos, example readings, and then we have a Facebook group where people can interact and do readings with each other. And Madison and I do a 1-hour workshop, pulling a card and doing a deep dive on that on the first Monday of every month. So there's a lot of ways the students can kind of plug in. But we really just wanted to provide a way for, you know, coaches and therapists and healers who may have played with many decks, but there's something about, at least for me, knowing one deck really well and understanding the lexicon behind that deck. And then you can pull and get clarity and include the other decks as well. But I found that when I learned one deck really well, that's when it all sort of made more sense to me. So that's what encouraged me to bring this to other people.
Yeah. I know several other people who have created decks, and they're all like different. And knowing like I have my own tarot deck that it's not Rider Waite. Is that how you say it? It's a nature sort of thing, because I relate to that, but it speaks to me, and I feel like I get messages through the cards, and so they really enhance my life versus and they in some ways they can answer questions for you that you could be like, you can have something that's nagging at you, and you can draw a card and it can kind of settle that. So you don't have to think about it anymore. You can just, okay, so this is a potential answer. I'm not going to like push on it. It can just like be whatever it's going to be. I've been given an answer instead of wondering what is the answer.
Yeah. And even when the answer seems ambiguous, You know, we say all the time, you can't make this up. I mean, the cards, if you believe that the cards are divine,
Mhm.
however, a divination tool, are divinely inspired, then you trust the card pulls.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean, you know, we have to do our own clearing and make sure we're in a mindful place. You know, like even if a friend says to me, can you pull a card? You know, if I've had a really difficult day,
Mhm.
no, I'm not in that space to do that. Right. And as a therapist, the same thing. I have to constantly make, when I was doing therapy, I had to make sure I was in the space to do that work. So it's,
Yeah.
while it's playful, it's also not something to, it's something to be revered and
Frivolous.
not, and respected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you pulling that card, knowing that a little bit about what you said before we even started recording, that you're in a space that's kind of private, but not unpainful. And I think that card that you did end up pulling was meant for you as well.
Mhm.
I can the peace aspect of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So do you
So
have a question for the cards?
no, I think you actually
Okay.
that was it. I, I have a relationship with doves and birds, and
Mm.
I have an experience with a hawk when I embraced sobriety. I had actually had a hawk. I was standing next to my house turning the water off, so I had my back to everything else, and it where the faucet is underneath an overhang. And a hawk came and was messing with my hair, but I thought it was wasps. So I'll go like this, and I could feel the weight of the bird. Um, he never touched my head. They have sharp, sharp talons. I mean,
Yeah.
if he'd have actually touched my head, he would have scratched me. But my hair was up like it is now, and I could feel him messing with my hair, but not my scalp. And then I turned around and he flew over and sat on the fence that's on the side of the property. He was looking at me, and I knew it was a message. I mean, it was just like
Mm.
there was no question in my mind he was trying to tell me something. And it was like the next day I realized he's just saying stay the course. And it was never I haven't had any alcohol in since September 9th. And I never wanted any. It just was like it
Wow.
just isn't a part of my life anymore. But it was never like I don't ever feel like I'm denying myself, like I can't have any alcohol if I wanted it. I just and it's not like I'm not around people who do drink, because I am. I just like
So that's interesting that you bring a hawk up, because we have a hawk in our yard this year.
mhm,
We've seen them, you know, in the trees, but we have a hawk now. We also have fox.
mhm,
And sometimes we put leftovers out, and the fox and the crows and whoever's out there comes to the bowl, raccoons. And
mhm.
now a hawk is showing up. And the hawk also splays out in the field, full spread all the time. And I've lived in this location for 9 years.
Mhm.
And this hawk is very prominent. So that's called, for people listening, that's a synchronicity that just occurred in our conversation. Right.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah,
Hawks are messengers, and they're they're magnificent birds.
they really are.
But yeah, when they come into your life, they have something for you.
Yes.
They bring something. We have
Yeah.
other birds too. I mean, we have the ravens or crows that are we have these crows. It's a crow family. And there's some dynamics going on with them. I'm not really sure what it's all about, but they 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 visit me, and they have things to say to me.
Well, crows are very, very talkative, at least the ones here.
And they're really intelligent.
Yes, they are. Well, I mean, seriously, if we don't put the bird seed out,
Mhm.
they're practically knocking on our door.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah, what are you
remember
doing?
us?
Come
Dinner time.
on. Yeah.
We have other animals to do that for us too.
Yeah, the deer. Yeah.
So DeeAnna, how do people work with you? And I know that you have a free offer that you make for people, the Ultimate Soul Design Workbook that walks you through your goals and aspirations to find your soul purpose. How can people work with you, find you, all the stuff?
So my website is DeeAnnaNagel.com. I'm at DeeAnna Nagel on Instagram and Twitter. If you go to my website, you'll either see a pop-up or you can go to the bottom and there's a free sign up for the workbook. It's just a PDF download. I do not work with people individually in session anymore because my sole purpose now is teaching. So most people get to know me through my courses now. And again, it's not just essential soul care that I teach. I teach all manner of coaching courses, wellness coaching, cognitive behavioral, visioning, including complementary and alternative methods in your practice, therapist as coach ethics, clinical supervision. So, ethical use of essential oils and therapy. So it's a wide swath of courses. My larger courses, if you take a 30-hour course with me, I give a free 30-minute consultation at the end. So, and there's verbal, written exchange throughout the course. So you get feedback. It's not, check the box next, take a test. It's all of my courses are taught from a perspective of introspection. So even if it's an academic topic, then you're still being asked, so what has been your experience with, you're here wanting to learn how to be a clinical supervisor. You had clinical supervision at some point. What was that experience like for you? What was your takeaway? Go back there. Let's talk about that. So I'm just really big on, for lack of a better word, self-awareness, because I think when we take the time to become aware of what gets kicked up in us, like, how does this inform your work, but how does it inform you, the you already are? Then I think our light shines brighter for others.
Absolutely. So mostly you work with other coaches that are trying to add to their repertoire, and therapists and professionals.
And anybody, I mean, like my Essential Soul Care course, I have a young 19-year-old taking that course who loves Oracle decks, loves tarot. She just wants to learn, so, and I've put a lot of intuitive people through my intuitive wellness coaching course who may be on another track altogether, but they want to include, integrative nutrition and chakras and psychospiritual dynamics to their work. So therapists and coaches primarily, but anybody, I've worked with occupational therapists, physical therapists, people who just didn't know and they took a course and it landed them in a certain direction. A lot of people come into a course thinking, this is what I'm going to do. And it leads them somewhere else. And that's happened with me too. I also have a Reiki course for people who want to learn Reiki 1 through 3. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
Interesting. We'll definitely put the link to your website where people can learn more about what you're doing and connect with you over there. So, what is the one thing that you hope the audience takes away from our conversation today?
That becoming intentional and mindful about your spiritual and intuitive practices will only enhance your life and the life of others. Because we're here to shine for other people.
Yeah. Thank
To
you
be
so much
beacon.
for joining me. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.